Alors même qu'au départ...
Everyone ready?
Yes.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
For joining us again for another wonderful session for the African Week 2020. And yeah, I'm excited. This session is going to be really, we always keep the fun one, the best one at the end, right? So you guys agree with me?
Yeah,
Exactly. So that's what we're going to do. My name is Kimo Kamara, and I will be the moderator today. And I have some amazing panelists, and so we want to really focus. Our discussion session is going to be about the diaspora, but diversity and inclusion from the diaspora perspective. So I'm really excited about that. But before we start the session and introducing the panelists, we have an opportunity to have someone address us. And so we're gonna actually go live right now to get an official speech from, what is the name? Is the technical ready?
Yeah, ready?
Okay.
Thank you for the invitation to address you today. The Commission places a lot of importance on diaspora links between host and home countries as a means to enhance development. We need diaspora communities in our efforts to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. Achieving these goals is key to addressing inequalities. I consider it a priority to engage with and learn from people experiencing everyday discrimination. This is essential if we want to make our policies more effective and better tailored to the needs on the ground. We are committed to making policy and lawmaking more open and inclusive. Our actions rely on evidence and a transparent process which involves citizens and stakeholders throughout. The EU Anti-Racism Action Plan that the Commission adopted on the 18th of September is an excellent illustration of our resolute commitment to listen and learn from those affected. The objective of the action plan is to turn the tide and make sure that there is no place for racism and racial discrimination in the European Union. We know we cannot achieve that goal if we are disconnected from this reality. This is why the Commission will implement and monitor the action plan with the involvement of people experiencing racism and discrimination. To that end, we will hold regular consultations with stakeholders at all levels. We will maintain a continuous dialogue with civil society organizations, anti-racism activists, including representatives of diaspora networks, as well as other key actors such as social partners, political parties, businesses, academia, cultural and sports organizations. We want to give a voice to grassroots actors who have first-hand expertise and experience for defining the right way forward. Another of our commitments is to appoint a coordinator for anti-racism. The coordinator will liaise closely with people with a minority, racial or ethnic background and relay their concerns to the Commission. The recent EU Anti-Racism Action Plan is not an isolated example of the way we involve citizens affected by racism and discrimination in our work. In November 2018, the Commission issued a policy paper on key challenges to ensure effective responses to combat Afrophobia. That paper contains a number of recommendations to recognize and provide an effective action at EU and national level. Other initiatives include the launch at the end of July of the EU-wide public consultation on possible EU actions to promote the integration and social inclusion of migrants and people with a migrant background, and the setting up of the expert group composed of persons with a migrant background. Members of that expert group will be able to participate in the development and implementation of migration, asylum, and integration policies. The European Union has for a long time been working on diaspora engagement, both directly with the diaspora organizations, including through support of diaspora-led projects, and by working with governments in Africa to facilitate diaspora engagement and investments. The EU Global Diaspora Facility, launched in June 2019, aims to facilitate engagement and cooperation between countries of origin and their diaspora on all continents, including with the EU and member states. Diaspora experts are given a platform to provide expert advice to their country of origin, which makes them agents of change and development. Their organizations are also consulted on the challenges they face and on good practices for engagement with their countries of origin. Diaspora and governments are also brought together at an annual EU Global Diaspora Forum. These communities have an important role to play in our collective efforts to build a more sustainable future for all. I am grateful to today's organizers for having the role of diaspora communities to foster equality, diversity, and inclusion on the agenda. I am sure that the panel discussion will provide a meaningful opportunity to raise awareness of these important issues. I wish you all fruitful discussions and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner, for blessing us with those kind words, but also sharing the EU policy when you come to African diaspora. I think now with my panel, we're just gonna pick up from that discussion and then just go dive a little more deep into it, because on the panel we have entrepreneurs, we have a policymaker, we have activists, so it's from all background. But before we do that, what I'm gonna do, I will just give you a chance to introduce yourself, just your name, who you are, and then we can move on. So just less than a minute. Again, my name is Kimo Kamara. I'm the founder of OMEC, which is a diaspora platform, a community-centric platform that's dedicated to the social and professional advancement of the African diaspora. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm passionate about this topic. Alain.
My name is Alain Hurikiye. I'm originally from Burundi. I live in the Netherlands, and then I'm the founder of Wagenzi. Wagenzi is a diaspora investment platform. So what we are trying to do, what we are doing, not even trying, we are trying to promote diaspora investment in small businesses in their country of origin. Actually, we are conducting some kind of pilot project in Burundi and Uganda. I'm happy to be here as well.
Thank you for being here. And Aurélie?
Yes. Bonjour. Good morning. My name is Aurélie Mouloua. Currently, work in communication for an incubator and a businessman. I created a network. I'm the founder of Belgium Entrepreneur, focusing on facilitating Black business women to thrive. Thank you very much.
One will be Marie.
Yeah. So my name is Maria Rena. I'm MEP, so European Parliament, and I'm chairing the Human Rights Committee. I work in the External Affairs Committee and also in the Environmental Committee. And I'm really happy to be there because I was at the beginning of the story of the African Week in the SND, because I'm very passionate about Africa, but also about diaspora. And we have a lot of diversity in Europe, and we have to promote diversity. A lot of people are thinking diversity has to be a threat, and I think it is totally the contrary of that, and we have to say it and to promote it.
Well, excellent. I will tell you, you are on the right panel. So I can't wait to hear you sharing this thought. In addition to the three people in the room here, we also have two people calling virtually. So I will have Abubakar Sumaoro to, actually, before we go to Abubakar, I will have Esa Ann. And if you want to go, and then please introduce yourself, your name, and then what do you do, and then quickly.
No, she doesn't hear you.
Okay. Can we go with Abubakar right now?
Je vis en Italie.
Where is Abu Bakr?
Abubakar, are you there?
Oui, je suis là, vous m'entendez?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Go ahead. My name is Abubakar Sumaroho. I'm the founder of the Lega del Bracchiani. It's a defender of the right of workers in the food chain. It's an organization in Italy fighting for a healthy food chain, respecting the right of labor of worker within the perspective of the agricultural, the consumers, and the farmers.
The next person online actually was in N. Sorry, apologies for that. Is Gertrude Lano?
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Geertra Lano, and I work for the International Organization for Migration, IOM office in Brussels. Very happy to be with you tonight to discuss about migration and development and the role of diaspora.
Thank you for being here. So let's jump into it, okay? I will start with you, Alan. What do you think, as a diaspora entrepreneur, a diaspora professional who's been in Europe now for a little while and then very active in the community, what do you think is the role of the African diaspora professional when you come to socio-economic development on the continent?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Kemo. For me, I think the diaspora can play 4 roles, according to me. And then one of them is what we know the most is through remittances. We support our families. We send them money to provide for themselves. But on the other hand, we can also support our countries of origin through what are called business networks and linkages by connecting, let's say, local government or local companies to, let's say, European companies or the European government. So this is some ways we can do. But on the other hand, we can also support our country of origin through knowledge sharing. So this is really through bringing back our skills, supporting, let's say, some organizations over there. But also, for me, what I'm passionate about, what I'm working on is really through investment and entrepreneurship. For me, it's a passion when I look at the remittances that we sent, which is around 4 billion when it was in 2018 or 2019. And then when you look at that number and then you really look at the amount that is really building our continent is less, because 75% of all those remittances are spent only on consumption. So we are giving that money away in some ways. So I think the reason why I created Wagenzi was to change that trend, that we start investing in our local communities, in our local companies, and then we can create those decent jobs that we hear all the time. We can promote entrepreneurship and then support the growth of our communities. So that would be my take on that.
Okay. I like that number. I think, like you were saying, the remittances in 2019 actually went to 48 billion. So that's a lot. But we'll come back to that discussion a little bit, what can be done with that. Excuse me. I think like with the COVID, we're all trying to figure out what is like a most appropriate social thing. So are you supposed to cough? But anyway, let's move on. Aurelie, you are an entrepreneur, and your actually platform is focused on all women, especially of African descent, in Belgium, and giving them opportunity, access, visibility. From that perspective, what are some of the success stories have you seen within this network that's really making meaningful impact within the community?
Alors, merci pour cette question.
I thank you for your questions. I don't have one success story. I think all the women who are on my websites are success stories. So they were faced with daily obstacles and they managed to go beyond them. With regard to communities who reside on the African continent, there is one story indeed I'm really proud of. It's a particular case. It's Maya Diane. She created the brand Sabu. It's a cosmetics zero waste located in Uccle in Belgium, in Brussels. The ingredients come from Senegal, her country of origin. What's interesting in her case is that she was inspired by the culture of our country, but also the job she generates. I'm not sure I'm aware of, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say, but she intends to dedicate the money she earns into investing in fields where women can plant crops for different culture, and the money these women will earn, because they will earn that money, and with that money these women can send their kids to school, and that's a circular economy, and that's how we should think our business creation, not only to generate income, but also to generate more from it.
I think I'll go next. I'll come back to you. I promise. I'll go next to. I just want to get our online friends involved. I'll go with Gertrude. Apologies for not pronouncing your name right. But as someone from the international institution perspective, and especially an organization that's really involved in engaging with the African diaspora, with all diaspora globally, but also from the African perspective, what are some of the accomplishment? What are some of the success have you seen within the African diaspora community, making economic development impact on not only in Africa but in EU?
Thank you very much for this question. It's an important question indeed, because sometimes in our discussions we tend to focus on the impact migration can have on development of countries of origin through remittances, entrepreneurship, as was already mentioned. But we should definitely not forget that migration also has a positive impact on the development of Europe, and that migrants also contribute here to our economies. I think we're all aware that Europe is an aging continent. There are many projections that say that without migration, actually our population would fall. We have more and more shortages on our labor markets, and this is where migrant workers from Africa are really increasingly essential for their contribution to European economies. Let's just think about the COVID pandemic, for example. This really, shed light on how important migrant workers really are for our economy, whether it's, for our food supply or whether it's, in the health sector. Migrant workers really make an essential contribution there. And I think it's highly time that, we put this positive contribution of migrants to our economies and to our societies overall in Europe a bit more into the spotlight.
Yes. I think speaking of migrant worker, we have all seen, especially this COVID-19, if you didn't see them before, when we are all hurting in the grocery store to get those last, whatever product that was existing, or like when you go to toilet paper and then like vegetable or anything, and then staying home, this migrant worker was forced, or in most cases, but like they were out there and doing the work, and because of them, we are able to feed ourselves, we are able to stay home in our comfort. And speaking of migrant workers, I think, Abubakar, that's something that you know a lot about. And so I want to go back to you, and the question that I want to ask is, with this growing anti-migrant sentiment that's gone across not only Europe, but like globally, I want to say, in America, in South America, everywhere, right? How is that impacting, or what would you say are some of the big misconceptions about, migrant, period. I want to say African migrant that you deal with particular, but what are some of the big misconceptions about migrant, and how is that making the work that you do really challenging?
Je vous remercie pour
Thank you for the opportunity you gave me by asking the question. I would say that the pandemic we are going through currently has shown a wide array of disbalances, I will say, or the weakness in the functioning of our societies. The question related to the place of migrants in the society, in the culture, is being tainted by categorization, I would say, emphasizes on races. This has been influenced by a politic of the fear of the stranger that is held responsible for the scourge that we are going through economically and socially due to the pandemic. And we also see a paternalistic approach that is rising. Therefore, I would suggest to rethink the way we are thinking of the human being a migrant or an African, but we are all human beings. We breathe the same air as a European citizen would. We share the same preoccupations. We share the same destiny. However, at the political level, there is a tendency to stigmatize the migrant. The uncertainty about our future is shared by all of us. This is why we should see the person in front of us as a human being, and we should strive to free ourselves of the chain that hold us prisoner in our vision, in the way we see the other person. As Mandela would say, to free ourselves from our change, we should stop seeing the migrant as an extraterrestrial being, as a Martian. He is or she is a human being, whatever her or his identity card, whatever is written on his papers, he remains a human being.
Of the day, we are human beings, regardless. The term migrant is just happen when you go from a point A to a point B. So if you're in your country, then you're still a human being, whether you're in Africa, in South America, or in Europe. So that if we can all remember that, that will make life much easier. Mary, I'm going to come back to you now. Since you waited for all the way to the last, so I will do 2 questions for you.
Well, yes.
The first one, I want to hear your perspective about the African diaspora community. When you hear that, what comes in your mind? What are your experiences about that? What do you have to say about that? That's just a warm-up introduction part. And the second question is from the EU Parliament. I know the Commissioner kind of blessed us and gave us some ideas about the policies that the EU. What sort of policy are you aware that the Parliament has for the African diaspora, particularly, or in the diaspora in general?
I will speak in French, so we can. way of
Absolutely.
speaking.
I will forget sometimes to use my French.
It's okay.
So,
It's
yes.
perfect. So
Yes.
I think that people seeing us are both French and France, but all French and English speaker. Alors, première chose.
So firstly, your question: why do we have today people in Europe that come from Africa? I think we have to go back to this first question. It didn't just happen yesterday or today. Well, the answer is that Europe colonized Africa in the past. And the consequence of this colonization was that there were exchanges, there were movements with Africa in our past. Hence, African population who are here for 3 or 4 generations. The reason is that Europeans went first to Africa. So the first to move were Europeans and not Africa. And it's important to remember history, because when we talk about migrants, very often we think of Africa. No. If Europe is a rich continent, it's thanks to Africa. Thanks to Africa, Europeans continue to get richer today. Why? Because all the wealth held in Africa, talking about resources, natural resources or other, we need them here in Europe for smartphone, for the copper, for all the minerals. Everything is in Africa. Therefore, Europe richness lies in Africa. So it can only be fair if we really strive for globalization. We cannot only have globalization of resources, meaning we only take without giving back anything. This is why I always wanted to work in the globalizations to make it fairer. Today we try to fragment things, saying that, oh, I don't know where my smartphone comes from. It's like people who eat a lot of meat, but at the same time, they don't want to look at animal ill practice. I believe we need to look at what happens in the farms to be aware of that. Globalization does not mean I can look only at some aspect and not the other. So this is crucial. That's the first principle we have to hold dear. Secondly, what does that mean, the African diaspora? I come from a migrant background. That is that my parents come from the south of Italy, southern Italy, from Sicily, more precisely. And Sicily was the gateway between Africa and Europe. And they used to call us black in Europe. So our parents could be twice absent. That is, they were not Belgian, neither Italian. So we call this a double disappearance or double presence. We were and a Belgian citizen and Italian. And for me, diaspora is a double being, to be a European with everything it entails, citizenship, to voting rights. We're mentioning voting right to foreigners. So, and also it is to be with a community which had to leave, whatever the reason, but who keep the ties with the country of origin or with the community. And community has no border. The African community living in the Netherlands, in the US, they share a common future that is linked to this difference, because yes, we are different, but it's not a negative difference. It's only beneficial. It's only richnesses. If every day I woke up and I talk to myself, looking at the mirror, I will only meet people that look like me, I would go straight back to bed, because that's too boring. It's not interesting. What's interesting is our differences. And through the differences, that's how the diaspora organize it itself. So first, we should give them the European citizenship right. We saw it on the piece of migrants. How can we leave migrants in between statues that with no dignity? It's a disaster for us because we fail on promoting our value, and a disaster for them because they are nowhere. They have no status. So firstly, there is a question of citizenship that is fundamental within Europe. Everything we would do to fight against discrimination, and we heard it from the Commissioner, encouragement measures against discrimination, supporting different type of entrepreneurship. We need to focus on that. But also, we should use the skills and the expertise of the diaspora with a friendly continent, a friend, in order that they help us create the links. We mentioned that the fact that the money that the diaspora sends to Africa is much higher. The volume is much bigger than our foreign aid to Africa. We're proud to say that we have 0.7% of our income sent to Africa to aid for development, but the diaspora action is more than that. While they are in an extremely difficult position, they have to make more than we do. And there we have to help and support the diaspora to better structure the support it delivers to our partner countries.
I've used a lot of good word that I, as a diaspora expert and passionate in this space, especially you mentioned a lot about the bicultural aspect of diaspora, which is extremely important, but the diaspora capital. But starting with the history, understanding our history, where does all this come from? I think for me, especially from this field, I think there's a need of creating a lot of awareness within both community, whether it's a diaspora community or the host community, understanding. So the history aspect of it is important, and also understanding the diaspora capital. So that's why we started the conversation with understanding what are the impact, whether that's in socioeconomics in the West here, or as a diaspora entrepreneur, what are some of the talent, impact that they have. Alan, I want to come back to you and just pick up from that perspective. As a diaspora entrepreneurs, what do you think are the benefit when supporting diaspora? First, I'll ask you, how can we support, how can EU, support the African diaspora entrepreneurs here? Because you mentioned a little bit like a transfer investment. Mm-hmm. How can they support the diaspora entrepreneur, one? And the second question to that is, how that support will have impact on the continent, but also here?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. I think to answer your question, I will go back to what she just said. Maya just said about the bicultural aspect of us diaspora. So for me, it has been a challenge to be a diaspora entrepreneur, and migrant entrepreneurs in the Netherlands. So we are not seen as entrepreneurs. So we might have great ideas, but when we go, we pitch. When we are looking for funding, they see us as challenges. It's like our ideas are not viable. So there is like a kind of a glass ceiling out there. So they are telling us, come with your ideas. There are some support, but when we reach that point, you always get a rejection. And then I remember when I started this journey, it has been 2 years. So there is this just glass ceiling, but we keep fighting. So that's one. The first aspect, I would say, inclusive policies, helping us, understanding where we're coming from. I have this feeling that when we're talking about entrepreneurship or development aid, in any way the diaspora can contribute to their country of origin, is that we are not seen when we are here as experts. We are seen as people who are just here trying to to just enjoy, let's say, this EU environment, but not really our expertise are not taken into consideration. That's one part. It's really about inclusion, having equal policies. I'm coming from the Netherlands, and then when I am there, when we talk about all these inclusion, when we talk about diversity, it's a story that sometimes I'm like, okay, what are we talking about? Because to give you a concrete example, in the Netherlands, when we talk about diversity, we talk about women empowerment. We're not talking about migrant empowerment. So that's how it is in the Netherlands. And then when we talk about, again, entrepreneurship, there is this glass thing that I already mentioned already. So when it comes to then bringing our knowledge to Africa, we cannot go anywhere. We cannot get funding anywhere. So we need to partner, let's say, with other native Europeans to do what we want to do. But then again, there is always, it's always tricky because we want to be behind a big organization, but we don't have the same agenda. We don't see the African issues the same way. So it's always, let's say, a chicken egg question. So do you go alone? Do you go with a partner? So for me, these are those challenges that I'm facing as a migrant entrepreneur. When we talk about inclusive policies, I think there are several research around that. So then how, for me, really the EU, when we talk about diaspora engagement, when we talk about entrepreneurship in the migrant community, how can we be more concrete? How can we, set up some specific measures? Like, okay, this is like, I don't want to say that we need to have migrant program, but I want to have inclusive programs. When you say, okay, when there are 100 applications from, let's say, all EU citizens, let's take into, deep look at these migrant entrepreneurs. How can we help them more? So I want more inclusive policies, but I don't want something special for migrants, but just inclusion in how they assess what we are doing. Thank you.
I will go to you, Hurley. I would just want to piggyback on that, and also being an entrepreneur. Do you see some of the similar challenges? I think one thing he said, and I pick up on this, I hear someone also using this term within my network, saying we do exist, but we are not seen. And I think I also hear Abubakar saying the same thing, right, about migrant workers. With entrepreneurs, do you see some of those challenges, and some of the specific challenges do you see within your community? Because I think it's actually even hard when you look at the intersectionality, right? Being a woman is already hard in itself, and then you are a woman of African descent, so you kind of come in of like a double baggage, and I don't know what else to add to it. But on the flip side, it's a positive. We can talk about like that strength and the positive part of it, but like I want to hear some of the challenges like you see from your community.
Alors déjà, vous avez dit mon mot préféré.
Well, you said my favorite word, intersectionality. Is brilliant. Sometimes it's something that makes people afraid, but in fact, it's knowing everything that can add up. Intersectionality is accumulating several types of pressure as a fact of being a woman, to be black, and to be maybe a Muslim, to have a veil, or to be disabled. And all this will be added layers and will make it even more difficult than if we were in terms of total predominance. This was just to put things back into context a little bit. So yes, indeed, there are different challenges to be taken up. You mentioned the fact of being invisible. Let me come back on something, on a survey, a study made by Deepax. It's here in Belgium. It was about obstacles to entrepreneurship for Afro-descent people. It was called The Color of the Risk. And there is one of the chapters which is called The Color of the Hero, the hero's color. When you think of a hero, you think of Bill Gates, of an entrepreneur, you think of Bill Gates, you think of Elon Musk, and so on. People like that. But spontaneously, you will not hear Aliko Dangote. And you will not even hear the name of a woman. I cannot even give you the name of one black woman entrepreneur in Africa. So there is that kind of double invisibility here. And what it brings about as issues is that knowledge of these women are known as kind of peripheral knowledge when they will take the floor and talk about skincare, will be skincare for them. So, for example, when you have Carication tea, it's an ethnical product, you will put different labels on it, and it will kind of marginalize the expertise of these women. And yes, indeed, it is a problem, because their knowledge and the vision they have of themselves will be reduced and will be made invisible. I like wild words, and there is a word that I like very much, is depastimicide. It's killing science. It's making some science peripheral and erasing them for more mainstream knowledge or for mainstream sciences. And at the end of the day, it's a loss for everyone. Because you have some kind of inward-looking attitudes and you put yourself aside. We are going to develop things for us. Well, I mean, in the diaspora, I am Belgium, and I am as Belgian as any of the Belgians. But I think at the end of the day, it will be a loss for everyone. And then there is also some distrust. We talked about funding, and that's a real issue. Maya told me that when she left, when she had to go to banks, she was refused 1, 2, 3 times, and she had to sell her house to invest money into her project. And she was right to believe in her project, because now her shop is doing well. So there is some kind of distrust to institution, and it is all the more damageable, because you need to find alternative ways to work, and it will definitely speed you down in your opportunities and speed down the progress of your companies. I talked about the hero's color, but I could even talk about the female hero color. Once again, it's not women who are seen as entrepreneurs. We know all aspects of gender policies in the labor market. You talked about the glass ceiling. It's very often a term which is coined for women. And I forgot the name of the lady who did it, but it's not even a lady. It's a young girl. She was 18. She called so-called copper ceiling, because this is what she wanted to link with Afro-descending people. When you have a glass ceiling plus a copper ceiling, challenges are twice as hard.
I will go back to you if you can come back. And we have elaborated a little bit on some of the challenges. But what are you doing as an African diaspora professional who moved into this country in Italy and then grown up there, and then it's like really taking on so many challenges and seeing this issue that you don't really didn't like, and then he decided to do something about it. And I think that's what is beautiful about your story. I want to now think about from the different perspective. As an African diaspora professional, what do you think is the role of other African diaspora professionals who are in the same position as you? What can we do? Not the European Parliament, not EU, not the government, but the African diaspora professional. How can we imitate somebody like you to amplify, to support you and in the work that you're doing?
Je pense que la première des choses qu'il faut faire, c'est d'essayer.
First of all, you need to free up of the status of diaspora professional. That's the first thing you need to do. Because this term was coined as a kind of submission instrument. As I said earlier, the racization instrument. And as already said, to make yourself peripheral. So you need to free up psychologically. You need to free up of that. You are a writer. When you are a writer, you are a writer. You are not a diaspora writer. If you are a sociologist, you are a sociologist. You're not a diaspora sociologist. You can be an entrepreneur, a journalist, and so on and so forth. So let's come back to this normality dimension, so to speak. Second, when you take a look at living conditions, so political rights, we are living in a European context, and if today there are calls for applications within the European institution, only the people with the citizenship of one of the member states can apply. That means that all other people are excluded. Real right for participation, because when it is about working, when it is about paying your taxes, there is no distinction there. Second topic of the topic is to imagine or envisage our presence here under a certain point of view that allows you to be active in the different processes. If there is a challenge to take up today, and if the pandemic has taught something to everyone, especially the politicians, it is a question of the invisible ones, the undocumented people in Europe. How come that they exist? They live in very poor conditions, work in poor conditions as many other workers, and they have no right to stay. This is one of the topics on which the European Parliament and the rest of the institution have to get united. And they need to take up that challenge and talk about regularization. The third element is about work, precarious work. We are working in a time of metamorphosis, of work exploitation, dehumanizing drift, and there is a question of gender also within it. These are challenges there again that can be taken up all together, especially if we can envisage our destiny and our future jointly. That's what it is about. Interpreting it under the point of view of resistance to the other person's freedom.
I like it. I especially the term of African diaspora professionals, and I think a lot of people can, I want to start thinking about that more and then see what are the challenges with that. And I think that's a good point. And I think it's always good to create some things like that when people really start really questioning things. But also I usually say together is the only way forward. So us figuring out to work together. And like I was mentioning about the woman intersectionality and the challenges that we have, if you look at it from the flip side, it's a power, right? How do you look at it from the weakness side and then to the power side? And so speaking of that, I think, Mary, I'll come back to you. I want to go back online with Get Through It. Am I saying her name right? Yes, you did. Excellent. I like the thumbs up. Thank you for helping me out. I told you guys this was going to be a fun panel, right? So now we're talking about the positive side of being an African diaspora, regardless, despite all the challenges that we have talked about a little bit here. From your perspective of engaging with migrant or with diaspora, I won't use the term professional, African diaspora professional for the remainder of the session. But what are some of those challenges that you face in engaging with the African diaspora community, right?
Thank you for this question. I think as IOM, we are engaging with diaspora communities, including African diaspora communities, through several programs where we want to connect diasporas for development. But we're also connecting with African talents in Africa as well, for example, through our Match project. And I think one of the key issues that we see is actually, or the key challenge, let's say, that we see is the lack of proper legal channels from Africa to Europe to allow young talents to migrate from Africa to Europe. I think all we've heard before in this debate is that migration can be very beneficial for us in Europe, but also for Africa. I alluded before to, the aging population in Europe, the shortages on our labor markets. Let's not forget that in Africa we see exactly the opposite scenario. There is a population forecast to double by 2050. There will be a lot of young talents entering the labor market without opportunities actually to find jobs in Africa. So there must be a way for us, to establish proper labor mobility channels to allow for more skills mobility between Africa and Europe. And for this, we need a partnership between Africa and Europe, and we need proper legal channels to promote labor and skills mobility between Africa and Europe, because I believe that would be in the interest of all of us. What we see now, unfortunately, is that the need for migrant workers in certain sectors in Europe is met through irregular migration, because the need is there for the workers, but the legal channels do not always exist. So migrant workers come, they work, but they're not always documented, like one of the previous panelists also mentioned. And this is, of course, a huge challenge, because how can you expect someone, who doesn't even have, the proper legal status to contribute to our society, but also to contribute back to their countries of origin? So for us, the first question is, how can we promote labor and skills mobility between Africa and Europe, and how can we ensure that there are also proper channels available to do that? And in this regard, we really welcome the talent partnerships that are mentioned on the new Pact for Migration and Asylum that was recently launched by the EU. And that pact has a specific section that focuses on partnerships and highlights talent partnerships as one possibility. And I think this is really a very interesting initiative that we should explore, because there is a lot of talent, and we should promote these skills and labor mobility for African talents. So this would be having the right legal channels to do so, but also allowing African diaspora to contribute their skills and knowledge back to their countries of origin. We have from our side piloted the Match project. It's a project that we implement with Senegal and Nigeria, together with a number of EU member states, where we really want to allow young African talents to have a first work experience in Europe, in different companies, different sectors, and then take this knowledge and experience also back to their own countries. So we believe that more could be done. We hope that more initiatives like that can follow, and that, the talent partnerships mentioned in the pact could also lead to, a better matching of labor skills and demand, and facilitate this skills mobility between Africa and Europe.
Excellent. Mobility between Africa and Europe, and tap it into the talent. Somehow, every time I want to come back to you, I have two questions. It's the same thing again. First, it's almost the same, like our session is the last session, so it becomes the fun session. So when I'm coming, the last question to you, I'm like, all right, I have a more question. First question, I want you to react to
you really want to be
I want to hear your thought on it. That's one. But what I really want to hear too is, earlier in your intervention, you had like all this amazing being of a diaspora background yourself. You understand the concept. You understand what it is about. You talked about this bicultural aspect of it, the history, the common feature that we have, like the need for us, like all this beautiful stuff, and you are in the position of policy making space, right? And that's a privileged position. So I want, for someone who's outside the parliament, we want to understand what are some of the things that goes behind the scene. For someone like yourself, like, I understand this and we need to pass this kind of a policy. What are some of the challenges, especially in this anti-migrant sentiment that's growing, right? What are some of the challenges that you deal with behind the scenes? So, two questions.
Alors, moi je suis...
Well, I'm pretty angry because all policies on the table today, and you talked about the Migration Pact, are policies that are maintaining a myth, the myth of white dominance on the black dominee. When you talk about the Migration Pact and say that we will take a few African talents, because there are just a few that are talents, and we will get them to Europe because us, the white people, we are all very talented. I think that this really maintains a myth. When you have commercial agreements, trade agreements with Africa, that allow us to export resources while keeping the African population in the mining industry, but definitely not in the processing industry. And I had the opportunity to go to Africa several times. In Europe, we are not producing cocoa. Very few African people in Africa have just tried chocolate. Why on earth are we not making chocolate in Africa? Because the value of chocolate is much higher than cocoa. So we are maintaining Africa in a kind of dominated relationship compared to Africa. And we keep on signing trade agreements with Africa that maintain Africa in that position. And I'm so angry when I hear Europeans saying that we are trying to have a different relationship to Africa. No, everything we are still doing with Africa today are still policies that are post-colonialism's policies that maintain this relationship with Africa. We need to change. I really hope, it's my wish, maybe I'll be dead before then, but I really hope that one day European people will have to migrate to Africa. This is my deepest hope. It's not to say we will still need African people to manage the problem of undernatality in Europe. I hope that one day the European will understand that their future is the world. It's not just Europe. We have a very European-centered discourse today. And as even myself, who is fighting about that, I had a seminar in 2017, and the seminar was called How to Be Black in Europe. And a philosopher told me that you were wrong. I should have called it How to Make Europe Black.
People saying, you have to be black in Europe.
You have to
because
be included. So
you have to be included.
Yeah.
And so it's a kind of this kind of mainstream that we have, and we have to change it. If we are not ready to change it, it will be a mess. And it is for the moment. And it is because we are not changing this way of thinking that you give the opportunity to these far-right people to be racist and to gain from it. Because people are just, they fear people coming from Africa. And so if you are not changing this, we are losing democracy, because the ones who are winning for that, they are the far-right parties.
Now I want to hear, I can't imagine. You are like in the middle of French and then just switch to English. That must be like really fun. That must be really fun there. So this is great. This is what you get for dealing with diaspora. We speak different language. I just hold it myself from like jumping into French, not to do that to translators. But the fire in you, I think every diaspora, African can understand that, like whether African or not, but like living here, understand that, like that's how we feel. So now that I hear you expressing it, which is good, like how do you deal with this in the parliament? How does that happen? What is the conversation that happen? How does it work?
I'm always fighting, always, even in my own party, because I think that we have to change some minds. Even in your own families, and it is always fighting. It's what I said. Quand je monte when I go to Parliament, when I wake up in the morning, I have the feeling I have to put on boxing gloves because, again, I will need to fight again a trend that is enshrined for decades in our mindset. But we do need to counterbalance this. We need to make that shift happen. And I will go beyond that. It's more than emphasizing on races. I think it's due to the capitalistic model that we have created that is the root cause. The money went where it will be more yieldable, where the yield would be the bigger. We're going to produce in China because it generates more wealth. We're going to extract the minerals in Africa because that generates more wealth. I think that's the system itself that needs to be blown up. We need to fight. I understand I'm going against the flow. It's not easy to transmit these new mindsets, but every morning you need to wake up, put on your boxing gloves and go. Whether you were among relatives, whether you're at the parliament. Recently, I went to TV for a program, and I was told that there's no diversity because we couldn't find any skilled migrant, any competent migrant. And I was not without any afterminds. But every day, I sent to them 2 names of different backgrounds that are experts in the medical field or in entrepreneurship, in finance, legal experts. My personal fight is every day I'm sending them 2 names of experts coming from diversity background. There are no professionals of the diaspora. The aim is to mainstream it, to make it normal that people from here and from there are experts. I met in Africa experts in energy transition. They were just brilliant, but nobody heard of them. Greta Thunberg, I haven't met many African young people on TV. I haven't seen them. But yet they are here, they are there, they are protesting, they're marching for climate. And that's what's unbelievable to me. They are not minorities. There are invisible majorities, but extremely visible when it comes to discriminate them. See,
so this is what we're going to do. We have the first and the second part done, which is understanding the capacity within the African diaspora community, talking about the challenges they face. And now we are going to drink water and breathe, and then go into the final part of the discussion, which is focusing on solution. Let's talk about solution. I think you did a great segue getting there. Now we understand our problem more than anybody. We understand our solution more than anybody. Now we got about less than 30 minutes to go. So I want to make sure I give the chance to everybody. But let's talk about the solution. Let's talk about how do we, first of all, before we even do that, I want to announce, I just heard that we have 36,000 people following us on live right now on Facebook. So if you're listening and you've been passionate about what you hear in this discussion, this amazing discussion, I promise you, this was going to be fun. So hold me accountable to that. But thank you for being here. Thank you for following us. You know what? I will start with you, okay? I think this is...
I'll try to be short.
Yeah.
To let the others.
All right. So this... let's talk about solution.
Yeah.
The African diaspora, because I just want to reiterate like something that you say. It wasn't too long ago, I think, there was a picture that was taken when they had like the climate things was going on in Paris, and then they took a picture. There was like one girl from Africa was a part of the picture, and then one newspaper kind of cut her out. Yeah, and so it was like really bluntly, those are the things. And then also, it wasn't too long ago, I think less than a month ago, one of the big CEO from one of the major bank in the US also said the same thing, that, yeah, we want diaspora, we want people, black people in our, but there's not black talent. So that's, again, reiterating like the things that you said. Now, what is the solution? From us, from the diaspora perspective, what can we do? Because the talent does exist. If you look at this table here, all talented, educated, professional for African, okay, I promise Abubakar that I wouldn't use the term professional, but like educated African talent. We know our problem, we know our solution. What are the things that we need to do?
Je pense que l'exemple d'Aurélie est un très...
I think the example that Aurelia mentioned is a good example. She created a platform of black business women. When we say that there shouldn't be any professional diaspora, to me, the diaspora should be powerful, and it has to show all the talents it has, all the skill in the widest array of areas. I think that's a strength of the diaspora. It needs to organize itself, because isolated, it's really tiring to fight alone. Another thing is to create a platform, whether being of scientists or businesswomen, it gives you strength. And that's the dynamic that is creating, that supports you. I think it has to come not only from the people who are discriminated, but it also needs to come from people who do discriminations. I advocate, I want that blind test will be done in companies, sending anonymous resume, so that the leaders do not choose their candidates by race, but based on skills. Such examples, it's a huge work to do, but we also need to accompany this with a mechanism of fines or sanctions towards anyone who is discriminating against people from different backgrounds. We also need to find the migration pact, because it's perceived as a problem. Migration is perceived as a problem, and it only reinforces racist behavior. We should change the rhetoric. We all live on the same planet. We're all interrelated. There are no good people or bad people. So this question of migration needs to be thoroughly reworked. I don't believe in a Europe that's a fortress. We should transform it into an inclusive Europe. We don't have it at the present now.
In terms of like just changing the narrative. And so that is I feel like one of the bigger challenges, because the term migration has like now represent this really negative connotation and this a negative narrative, which make the work of people like yourself really difficult. And now we don't even see those migrants as a human anymore, right? And so can you give us like what do you think are some of the solutions that need to be put on the table to like move forward?
Je pense que
I believe that several factors come into play. Our aim should be to have a positive look at migration. But if you allow me, I would like to go back to the question of racialization. There is Tidiam Thiam. He was the CEO of Suscredit. And in a few articles that I had the occasion to read, it's mentioned that apart from his situation, economic meaning, there is also the notion of him being black. The dimension of capitalist mindset does not explain everything. These are the two sides of the same medal, and according to the circumstances, we see it differently. So what do we need to change today? I would say we need a vision. What's the current vision while we're facing these challenges? We can't categorize some part of the population. The question of climate change is a global challenge. Social justice is a social challenge too. We have inequalities, we have the pandemic. These are a few examples of common challenging. We share the same fate globally. That's how we should think. And we should stop creating stories where superhumans are put forward. And so our mindsets also need to be decolonized. In our mindset, we still see the colony existing. That's difficult to change because we need to get rid of this negative mindset, both people who participated in the colonies and those who suffered from it. So both sides need to make an effort in order to think globally, to reach a global justice and not justice only for selected people with inequalities all around.
Doing something about white superiority. There's always, you always have like some good thinking. Alan, I'll go with you. And from your perspective as someone who's like really involved and been advocating for really the benefit of diaspora entrepreneurship, what does that look like to you? Like if you have the magic, give us some solution. Give us like a talk about the solution. I know you've been thinking about it a lot. Like what can the diaspora, specifically the diaspora itself, do? And then from the European and the policy-making perspective, just quick.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. So for me, I just first look at the problem that Africa is facing. One of them is youth unemployment, is lack of jobs. And then we all know, if you look at Europe, to create jobs is to create companies. There is no other way. So when we talk about the development of Africa, we only look at aid. So we are not, Europe, the EU, is not helping Africa to build companies. So what they are doing, they are providing trainings, they are doing a lot of stuff, but not really building companies. The first thing I think for me, when we look at the African needs, is really to create jobs. We can only create jobs by creating companies. So then what can the diaspora do in that stance? So I see for me two ways. So that's what we did at Wagenzi. So we want to help since we don't see anybody investing in the local economy, in our economy, so we want to set up this platform where we can invest in our local companies. So we create jobs there, but we can also create our wealth here. So that's one thing. But then on the other side is also to bring our knowledge. Our expertise, to go back, support those small companies, help them to grow. So this is what we can do concretely. But then we need inclusive policies. Inclusive policies, we know where the funding is, but to get that funding is always complicated. So for me, one of the solutions is to really make it easier for, let's say, minority entrepreneurs, or migrant entrepreneurs with maybe concrete solutions to bring to the ground, to get really easy access to finance, to go and conduct some kind of pilot project, and then after assess whether they're having really an impact. So when we are here, I've never seen any easy opportunity for a minority. We always have to do twice the job of another person to get the same resources. For me, it's really to create these inclusive policies, helping those, let's say, migrants in Europe to get easy access to finance, easy access to network, to have the opportunity to show what they are doing, and then also trying to find concrete solutions for our own problems. So for me, that's what I would have to say on that. So we have created that platform, but we've been struggling to get the funding because when we pitch it, they don't see that, as everybody said, this is not the right solution. Maybe you are too young. Maybe you don't know what you're doing. So that's what we've seen so far.
So people like yourself who has this really platform that is designed specifically to address some of the challenges that exist within your community, when it's supported, can go a long way, can be a meaningful part of the solution.
Yeah.
And so the idea is how can policymakers have a visibility to people like yourself and many other people out there, and then move forward. One more question. I'll go to you, and then I hear that we have a couple of people that want to actually from the audience. We can have over 36,000 people. Actually, not on Facebook, but on YouTube, because we're live on YouTube right now. So thank the YouTube community. And so I will ask you the same thing, a solution. What would be the magic thing right now? Let's say if you could have anything you want to make the platform that you're working on, really get the maximum out of it. What would that be? What is the solution that you're looking for?
Avant de répondre à ça, je voudrais juste...
Before answering to your question, just remember I have some numbers I would like to share with you. When Maria Arena mentioned the far right and the rhetorics we use sometimes, and we hear that the migrants are stealing our jobs, etc. What struck me is a study from the Roi Baudouin Foundation in Belgium. The community who have the highest level of degree, they come from Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi. So they have the highest degrees, but they also suffer from unemployment more. It's really not funny. They have 4 times more unemployment than the average population. So this is really strange. Well, it's a question. And I had another number. It was on the occasion of a rally in favor of people without ID. So when you legalize migrants, you make more money coming in the public finances, because control measure, Frontex or border controls, it's costly. So if you don't have enough money, allow people to come in. That's what Portugal did. These actions, they exist. They might be to be taken into consideration. I don't do politics, but some solutions do exist. I'd like to add the last piece of information. I work in a school for trade and Ishak in Belgium, and entrepreneurship. So I know people who work on this topic in Africa, and I heard that West Africa is the country in the world that has the highest number of small companies. Adding to that the fact that the young people the population is younger there too, so these are two strengths that we could use. I don't see any other logical solution than openness. We should open ourselves, and it goes both ways. Now, let me go back to your questions and my network. If I had this magic wand, what might help me grow, and I would be really happy if I could do it, is to increase the links that we create both ways. I don't like when we say we need them. No, needs, they're everywhere. We shouldn't think that way. In my mind, it's to create relationships. Lately, I went to a hairdresser. It's called Zaga Brip, held by Sandrine Zika. And she told me she regularly attended entrepreneur forums in Kinshasa, and she could notice some mistrust towards her because they believe that we come and barging and we are going to show you how we do it. But there are also a stereotype that's really present. They believe we are privileged compared to them. They believe we have subsidies and all the things. And to echo Abu Bakr, what's essential is to decolonize our minds. It's really important. So that's what I would say. Work on the perception we have of ourselves. And then I don't want to generalize. I don't know all of Africa. I come from Congo, DCR. So there's no notion of nationalities. So to go back from Congo and here, it's not. I don't have the same opportunities. So it's quite high to generalize over the whole continent. So my network is called Belgium Entrepreneur. So there's a link with Belgium. It's in the name itself of my network. We position ourselves. When they attended a conference, when I was told that we were on the margin of center and some are on the margin of the margin. So we position ourselves within Belgium. It is a chance. It is a privilege without taking this posture of being more important than them. So rethink our minds is important.
We all have work to do, right? Whether it's the host country or the European country, or also us as the people of the African descent and professional or talented people of the African descent. We have these resources that we can tap into. I think we have less than 10 minutes. Can we pick maybe one person online just to join in to see if they can share a question? All right. So is that Lore Daltilia?
Oui. Vous m'entendez?
Yeah, allez.
Yes, can you hear me? Yep. I have a question to all the speakers. I'd like to see if, according to you, the diaspora could help shift the paradigm or the governance in Africa, because there is a political aspect to this topic. Can diaspora play a role in this?
Maybe Abu Bakr can take it.
Yeah.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Yes. So the connection was quite bad. I couldn't hear the question. The question is whether the diaspora could play a role to improve governance in your country of origin. Can you influence it? All right. So can you hear me now? Well, I would say that there is the fact that the person of origin loses connection with the home country. If you were born somewhere but live somewhere else, you get disconnected from what happens on your country of origin. So that's an element that we shouldn't underestimate. The diaspora is absent from the home country. So when we remember the place where we were raised, and of course we want our country to improve, and when it doesn't take place, we should also be focused on the country where we live currently. And so we should do both things to improve improve life where you live and improve it where you come from. That's what we should do. The action should be focused on making the politics leader be accountable. So I don't believe the question is restricted to the diaspora. It's a more general question on the human being and the dreams he wants to come true. Thank you very much, Abu Bakr.
Clef. So what are we going to do here for the closing part? I will have each and every one. I'll go around and just give 2 words. How do you feel about the discussion today? And speaking from the African diaspora perspective and diversity and inclusion, right? I think it's been, I will go online and actually start with Gertrude. If you can use 2 words to describe what this session was for you today.
If I can use 2 sentences.
2 sentences.
No, I have for me actually 2 key takeaways.
Okay.
The first one is indeed about the need to promote, a more positive narrative about migration. When we open the newspaper, we often read negative stories. So what can we do to, highlight, the benefits that migration and diversity brings to us? I think that's the first key takeaway. The second one for me relates to the migration policy and the fact that most of the policy has been focusing on, again, negative aspects, how to tackle irregular migration, and not enough has been, done to actually promote more legal migration and genuine partnerships in that regard. So that, I believe, is the second one. And if I can say a third one, it's about how we can address some of the structural inequalities. Indeed, it was highlighted by one of the speakers. Many people of, migrant origin, still face issues when accessing the labor market. They're underemployed compared to their qualifications. So what can we do also to tackle some of these, structural inequalities that exist? So I think these are the 3 key takeaways from the event today from my side. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That was great. So I will go Alan.
Yeah, so for me, my takeaway is that, it's only one, is that, there is this new AU kind of, program, policies, to enhance the economic development of the continent, but also to share knowledge. But also I like to hear that there is this new diaspora kind of engagement program that is being implemented. For me, what I would like to see more is really concrete actions, and then not really at mostly international level, but also really at the grassroots on us really who are doing the work, let's call it like that. Because for me, what I've seen so far, it's always end up at the highest level with the international organizations, but not really on us doing other stuff. So for me, I'm happy to hear that there's those kind of policies, programs that might come out, but then how can we benefit from them? So that's for me what I'm looking forward to.
All right, thank you. And I see you two like breaking the rule. So actually, we'll take one more because we had, like I said, we had 36,000. So I've been hearing that. So one more, we're going to take one more question. The person is Raoto. We do that, and then I think the rest of you will be only the 2 words. Raoto, go ahead. Are you there? Can you hear us? Raoto? Can we try someone else? If Raoto, are you there? Okay, so right now I think we're gonna just wrap up. We don't have any more time. 2 words from you, 2 words from you, and 1 word from Abubakar, and then we're done.
Je vais respecter la règle. Moi, je dirais l'optimisme.
So I would say optimism, because when I see people around the table, we couldn't have had this debate 10 years ago. But also engagement and fight, because without them, optimism is not efficient. Thank you. If I could say 2 words, first is to be humble. It's important that the diaspora took a more humble stance and look at the continent in a different way. And the other word is in English is to uplift the continent. So it's exercise of balancing, a balancing act that we should do. There is an African I think it's an African proverb saying that you can't collect sand with only one finger. You need the whole hand. But it's also coordinating your fingers to manage to take the sand. And I encourage you to look at my website, Entrepreneur. It's a really nice website. I can see the businesswoman in you. Abubakar, 2 mots. 2 mots.
Trois phrases.
Non, pas 3 phrases, seulement 2 mots.
So 3 sentences I can give you, but even not a single. 3 mots. Action, and that's it. Thank you.
This was really informative. Thank you for joining us online today and then participating to this discussion. My name is Kimo Kamara, and this has been really fun, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, that was great. Thank you.